Welcome to another session of the Teaching and Learning with Technology Summer Series. And thank you for joining us this morning. As a reminder, the TLT Summer Series will continue to run Wednesdays through July 22nd. Symposium sessions are held in the morning from 10 to 11:30 Eastern, and Canvas Day sessions are held from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern. This afternoon's Canvas Day session is called One Cool Thing, so be sure to check out 7 different innovative ideas and vote for your favorite. You can find a full program listing on the TLT Summer Series website that my co-chair Sarah is posting in the chat. Recordings of the sessions are posted as available on the TLT Summer Series YouTube channel, and you can find that link on our website as well. Please use the chat feature if you are having technical difficulties by sending a message to the panelists describing your issue or question. If you have questions for the presenters, please use the Q&A feature. You can post questions, upvote questions, and comment on questions using that Q&A feature. Our first presentation today is What's Happening in the Wild, Faculty Perspectives on Selecting Appropriate Classroom Technologies. We will now turn things over to our first group of presenters.
Good morning, everyone. Let me just pull up my PowerPoint for our group. There we go. All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for attending our session. And we are calling it What's Happening in the Wild because we're going to be sharing 3 examples from Penn State faculty learning about new technologies and actually deciding to implement them in their classes. I'm Melanie Miller-Foster, an assistant teaching professor of international agriculture. And today I'm joined by 3 of my colleagues, Noel, Tim, and Mike. We're all members of the Global Learning in Agriculture faculty learning community, which has been funded by TLT for the past 2 years. So in today's session, we will focus on 3 things. First, the adoption decision moment. Then we will discuss 3 examples of technology integration into 3 different courses in the College of Agricultural Sciences. And finally, we'll provide a few moments of reflection for creating a plan to utilize new learning technology in one of your classes. So when thinking about our presentation, we decided to build it around Everett Rogers' diffusion of innovations theory. This is a theory that attempts to explain how, over time, an idea or a technology or a product gains momentum and spreads through a specific population or a social system. In the model, there are 5 stages of adoption of a new idea or technology: knowledge, persuasion, decision, implementation, and confirmation. We think it's useful here in order to explain the focus of our presentation. We're not necessarily here to present brand new technologies or convince you to use them, as in the first 2 stages of the theory, but rather we're focusing on the experience of faculty who have decided to adopt a new technology and implement in their classrooms, which are the 3rd and 4th steps of the model. And lastly, they'll share what happened during the implementation stage and whether they will continue to use the technology or not. That's the 5th and final stage in this model, and in some ways, the most interesting. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Knoll Habashi, to share the first example.
Okay, hello, I am Knoll Habashi. I'm an assistant teaching professor in international agriculture. Happy Canada Day. As Melanie mentioned, I was looking at some technology to implement into one of my classes. One of my classes is INTEG 100. It's an introduction to international agriculture. We're talking about agricultural systems all around the world, and many of my students haven't traveled internationally. Some of them have never even left the state. And so was trying to find more practical ways for them to get more sort of detailed, in-depth experience, trying to look at how farming systems might look very different in different parts of the world, or just an introduction to farming systems. So came across this idea of looking at 360-degree video. And I kind of realized, hey, many are available for free online. They're relatively easy to capture. They can be posted to YouTube or through Kaltura, through Canvas. There's lots of like, the path to entry is pretty well paved for us. And students use smartphones, which most, I want to say most, not all, are very well equipped and familiar with. And so I was able to connect with folks at Penn State's Media Commons, and they set me up with a 360-degree camera, and before I was doing some field research in Costa Rica. And they kind of helped me set it up, and I was able to go and take some different video footage. I got a small grant to buy some Google Cardboard headsets to help kind of make the experience even more immersive, but you don't need those. And started using them in class, and I think the students appreciated but missed some of the connections that I was hoping for them to make. And so then I went and kind of realized this idea of scaffolding, of how do I make sure that the students are being purposeful in terms of their engagement with it. So you'll see the questions on the next slide here that I posed to students beforehand. So before watching the video, I had them ask, what's growing, what is Melvin doing, and why? What else do you see in the video? So with that in mind, I want you to take a look. Tim, if you could send the link to the, yeah, you've got the link to the YouTube. So if you want to either open this up on YouTube, on your web platform, we'll play it on the screen here. On your phone, if you have the YouTube app, you can get the full immersive experience. We're going to take about 30 seconds, look at this video. I want you to take a look and see, where's Melvin? What's he doing? What crop do you see him growing? So Melanie is very kindly able to kind of move in all different directions here. We're able to see, okay, if we look down, oh, actually, if we look there, oh, look, there's Melvin. So you can kind of see what Melvin's doing here. And if we look down, can you see what Melvin is growing? Okay, so for those of you who have a keen eye, if you want to put in the chat, does anybody know what Melvin is growing here? Up there, okay, yeah, somebody got it, coffee. So, okay, so Melvin is growing coffee, right? He's chopping branches to create organic matter to help promote the growth of it. And so if you go to the next slide here, Melanie, you'll kind of see some of my lessons learned through this process. That 360 video is a useful tool, but no tool is always useful, right? Just like a hammer is a really useful tool, but it's not really useful if I'm trying to fix my fine china. Just because it's a tool doesn't mean it's useful. So having it, connecting it to broader learning objectives was really significant. Being able to scaffold students in the experience was really significant, as well as allowing students to explore and make their own discoveries. I would pair students together and I realized they would notice each things and were able to teach things to each other, which I think is something that we would much prefer in the active learning instead of just it coming directly from me. So that's a little bit about my experience working with 360 video. Now I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Tim.
Thanks, Noel. I'm Tim Kelsey. I'm a professor of agricultural economics, and I teach the applied research methods class in the community environment development major. Majors focus, or at least the students from the major many go on to work for local government, for nonprofit organizations, environmental organizations, many go into grad school, but it's a fairly applied kind of emphasis. The first time I taught the class, this research methods class, I discovered it wasn't working very well. I'd taken a fairly heavy lecture approach. I thought I had interactive things within the classroom, but the kind of reflection during the semester and the kind of SRTs, I realized that I'd entirely missed the boat. That a couple of the major issues, research methods, when I say research methods, it's surveys, focus groups, secondary data analysis of census and other data, that subject matter is really dry. It's difficult for college students to understand the relevance of it, and many of them didn't think that it applied at all to their long-run career choices. And likewise, I realized that a lot of them weren't getting as much practice in doing the analysis as I'd wished. And so after the first time I taught it, I essentially redesigned the class from scratch. I flipped the classroom, had major emphasis on small group discussion, broke students almost daily for the first half of the semester to discuss and critique applied research reports that groups like the United Way or a county government or others that put together the types of research that they likely will go on to do in their career. So small group discussion of that. It did a lot of flip chart work with a small group that they were identifying, practicing doing research methods. Also for several of their homework assignments, which are applied research things, I spent a lot of time in the classroom, them giving each other feedback on drafts of the analysis they're doing, drafts of the writing, drafts of the charts and graphs and tables that they were doing. And that seemed to work really well. The thing is that I ended up having to carry flip charts and markers all around campus quite a bit and other kind of logistical hassles of that. Please advance to the next slide. Could. So last year I had the opportunity for the first time of teaching in one of the engaged learning spaces, 110 ASI. That's a photo, or actually two photos of the space there. That it created a lot more opportunities for me to take full advantage of the small group work. The space has flexible furniture you can write on, the tabletops flip up so that you can write. One of the most interesting, useful aspects, it also has 5 short throw LCD projectors with immersive Solstice technology, which allows students with their cell phones and or laptop to share Word documents they're working on. So when they're critiquing each other's work, they can directly show each other the documents they're working with and make comments and feedback and make changes. Likewise, using that same technology or the flip charts, the whiteboards, the whiteboards, they could do brainstorming and do a lot of small group work. And so that moving into that space made it much, much easier to do the kinds of things that I was trying to do with the flipped classroom. So next kind of set of bullet points, please. What I discovered kind of the SRTEs and kind of the evaluation is the flipped classroom really made a major difference. I remember feeling really nervous the first semester I taught the class with the flipped the flipped perspective, because I had no idea what to expect. And I was afraid the students wouldn't adjust to the very different style of teaching, but they really did. And likewise, students quickly adjusted to the engaged learning space. It became, I think, a really strong asset of the program. I think one of the major takeaways or kind of the decision points for me is that really the pedagogy, the way I was trying to teach, the small group discussion, the giving each other feedback really led to my seeking out and finding the technology, first flip charts and kind of small group work, but then ultimately in the engaged learning space. And so it was the pedagogy led to the technology use and not the other way around. So with that, I'll pass the baton to Mike.
Okay, thanks, Tim. So my name is Michael Mohney, and I'm an associate teaching professor in the landscape contracting program. And today I'm going to talk about how I integrated the Kaltura video platform into my Work 120 course, Introduction to Computer Applications and Landscape Contracting, which introduces students to industry and non-industry specific software that are currently utilized by landscape professionals. Next slide, please. So integrated into the course is the creation of an e-portfolio using Google Sites, which serves as a collection of digital artifacts completed throughout the semester. Formative assessments include 2D and 3D landscape design projects with summative assessments in the form of software reflections completed as an e-portfolio page. Tim is going to post 2 links to course e-portfolio examples in the chat. Next slide, please. So my decision to use the Kaltura video platform was twofold. First, at the completion of a project, students submit a software reflection page for assessment. However, with 40+ submissions and 5 to 6 projects completed throughout the semester, the assessments are time-consuming to grade. So in addition to that, previous submissions lacked organization and were difficult to follow. So I found myself focusing more on the students' writing skills and not on the specific content. And second, I wanted to explore Kaltura's screen capture feature to record feedback. I utilize an analytic rubric for scoring, but the evaluations still require a lot of individual comments, and this process is also very time consuming. The screen capture would enable me to record meaningful comments while specifically highlighting text, directly referencing images, or testing hyperlinks within the ePortfolio website. Next slide, please. So to explore the Kaltura video platform, I attended 2 training sessions. The first offered by the instructional designers at the College of Ag Sciences, and the second offered during TLT's Learning Design Summer Camp. To introduce the students to the Kaltura video platform, I had them create a simple video introduction to their ePortfolio homepage. The purpose of this assignment was to gauge whether or not I wanted to continue with this platform or explore another platform like Adobe Spark or iMovie or something similar. At the end of this assignment, I informally polled the students on their comfort level with Kaltura, with the understanding that they would be utilizing this platform throughout the semester. The response was positive, so I updated the software reflection assignment to include the video presentations using Kaltura. In addition, students also appreciated the recorded ePortfolio feedback. Specifically, they liked that my comments were accompanied with detailed references to the rubric. But more importantly, they liked that they could pause the recording, they could continue working, or they could review step-by-step instructions while revising their assignment. At the end of the semester, again, I informally polled the students on their use of Kaltura. The student feedback was relatively positive. The students felt that the video platform was easy to use, and they liked that they could create and record the presentations on their personal computer without going to a location on campus. And for me, I felt I was able to focus more on the content of the presentation rather than focusing on sentence structure and grammatical errors. On the flip side of that, the students did not like the continuous recording feature in Kaltura. Although they could pause the recording, they didn't like that they couldn't record individual segments separately. So if they made a mistake somewhere in the presentation, they had to start over. But overall, I feel it was a positive experience for both me and my students. And I have continued to utilize Kaltura in my other courses to create software demonstration tutorials, LinkedIn learning style videos, and I've also created some quizzes. So I'll turn it back over to Melanie for a reflection activity.
Great. Thanks, Mike. All right, so now it is time for you to think about your own decision-making process. So what we encourage you to do is to start by thinking of a need that you have in one of your classes. Is there a problem you would like to solve or something that you would like to tweak to make your course better? We believe that starting with the need is the most important step. Next, make a list of some of the great learning technologies and ideas that you've heard about during the TLT Summer Series, or maybe you've heard about something from one of your colleagues or through your professional societies. After you make a short list of contenders, put a star by one idea that might address the need and excites you the most. Think about that idea. What's the first step you would need to take towards implementing this idea or technology in an upcoming class? When the TLT symposium was supposed to happen in March, we were assigned a 1-hour time slot. So we were hoping there would be time for workshop participants to share their action plans in small groups, but we don't think we have too much time for that today. So what I'll do is I'm going to give you some peaceful thinking time by being quiet and playing a song that is about 2 minutes long. Enjoy your work time. Okay, thank you, everyone. I hope that this moment of reflection has helped to recenter you in thinking about what kind of learning technologies you might implement in the near future. So now with that, we will turn to questions. And I'll ask my colleagues to join me back here. Excellent. So I'm just going to start off actually with asking my colleagues a question that I'd like to learn more about. So one of the common things across these case studies is that there was an identified need or a problem to solve. And so I'm wondering, how did you identify the solution that addressed the need that you had in your class?
For me, it was happenstance. I can't remember how I originally heard that the engaged learning spaces were available, you know, when I heard of that, it immediately clicked in to me that, oh, okay, that would make it much easier for the students to have the discussions about the applied readings and you know, share kind of things. And so I was aware of the need and heard of the opportunity and then connected with it rather than actively seeking it out.
For me, actually, Melanie, it was a conversation with you. And I think that's the beauty of being able to have conversations with colleagues. And I think something that's come out of our faculty learning community of just sort of that synergistic, when we get together and can discuss what we're experiencing, how do we make use of that effectively? So that I think that was just through conversations to, like, I had known of 360 video, but really didn't know what it looked like, how to implement it. And so just being able to talk to people was really helpful.
And then for me, Melanie, sort of the driver for me was doing just in the assessments. And I had considered using the screen capture recording to review the initial pages of the e-portfolio. Because I was assessing them through a rubric, and then I was writing a lot of comments, and I thought, well, it's got to be an easier way than this. And so I looked into the Kaltura screen capture recording feature and thought, well, I can provide some feedback, and I can actively click on links or highlight text on the ePortfolio website live, and then I could just provide them a link to the Kaltura video, and I thought it would just be an easier way to do it. And then from that, that led me into saying, well, I would want my students to be involved in this too, so how can they incorporate Kaltura use into the ePortfolio website? So then I had them creating introductory videos and then using the video presentations too.
Excellent. And Mike, while we're on you, we have a comment actually from a participant that asks about considering VoiceThread, which is also built into Canvas instead of Kaltura. I do actually know about this technology. The advantage of this, as Marcus has noted in the question pod, is that you can edit one slide at a time. And,
sure, yeah, I'm familiar with that, and I wanted to keep it within the same video platform. But I am aware that in VoiceThread, you can record a slide, you can review it, you can edit that audio, you can delete it, and then re-record it. So it is something that I did consider, Marcus, but in the end, I ended up going with Kaltura.
And we also have another question here, and this is specifically for Tim. How do you plan to continue with this space in the fall with a more remote class? Great question.
I faced that issue midway through spring semester when we shifted to remote. And what I found is that the breakout rooms in Zoom work close to that. Very quickly kind of suggested to the students in the breakout rooms that one of them share their screen, and the screen share function in Zoom replicates, not as eloquently, but it replicates the functionality of the small group discussion with the short throw projectors. The part that I struggle the most with via Zoom is in the classroom, I could be kind of in the back, kind of listening to each of the small groups, and I could tell at a distance which ones were on track versus off track, and I could go over and kind of gently kind of steer them back on track, and likewise tell when they were done with the discussion. with the breakout rooms in Zoom, unfortunately, I've got to physically jump between rooms. And so I feel like a little bit, I feel more disconnected from the students than I was in the space. I'm looking forward to when we can be back face to face and not have to deal with the pandemic related kind of distancing issues.
Great, and I'm going to ask one last question. So turning to that final stage of the model, that confirmation stage, I'm wondering if each of you can remark if you will use these technologies going into the future, and if so, will you change anything? So Tim, I know you kind of answered this, but I'm interested in hearing about that continued use and anything you'd change.
Yeah, I absolutely, as long as I'm able to use that space, would love to keep doing that. And as I mentioned, I was really nervous. The first semester I taught with a kind of very different style and different approach, and SRTE's feedback from students was incredibly positive. And so I've not looked back at all. I've not doubted at all my choice to flip things around and do things the way I've been doing them.
Yeah, and for me, I think I mentioned kind of some of the learning process of realizing, okay, how do I best sort of structure this to optimize what students are going into the experience. I think it's actually interesting, as we were going through some of this practice for this session on Monday, Mike was talking about using Kaltura for editing a 360 video and like, oh, well, what if you put a quiz into it? So I think as we're doing things more remotely, that's one way of, okay, we're not having this in-class discussion of what do you see, what's going on, but maybe there's ways to incorporate like a quiz into Kaltura. But I think it's definitely proven to be a useful experience, and I've gotten some good feedback, both quantitatively and qualitatively from students to support that.
And for me, for the presentations that the students create, and also the software reflections that they create using Kaltura, just a few weeks ago, I attended one of the TLT training sessions on using Adobe Spark. So that might be something that I'm going to explore a little bit further. And I might just use the screen capture feature to do my assessments, and then maybe incorporate Adobe Spark into, have them use that to create the presentation. So I got to kind of play around with that this summer.
All right, well, thanks. Well, they are waving the flag at us that our time is up, but thank you for attending our presentation, and we're very happy to have some of our College of Agricultural Sciences colleagues follow us with their presentation.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Melanie, Michael, Noel, and Tim for sharing your plans for choosing and integrating appropriate technologies in your classroom and helping the audience members create an action plan to integrate those new technologies into one of their classes. So while we give our next presenters a minute to transition and set up their slides, we have, once again, some Penn State news trivia for our audience members. Sarah, if you can launch that poll. So with the onset of COVID-19 pandemic, Penn State Ag Extensions have noticed an increased interest and are now offering webinars focused on what? Home fermentation, livestock judging, victory gardens, or food trucks. So I'll give you a few more seconds to submit your answer. Okay, looks like we have, so it looks like the majority went with victory gardens, which was the correct answer. They are offering webinars